Landon Briggs hadn't spoken a full sentence in 3 days. Not to his ranch hands. Not to the cook who kept trying to leave warm food at his door. Not to the neighbors who nodded with quiet sympathy when he passed them in town. He just grunted or gave a single nod, eyes distant like they were stuck on something he couldn't quite outrun. Most folks in Dry Willow figured he was still mourning. You don't lose a wife and baby in one night and walk away whole. Landon hadn't. He carried grief the way a man carries a busted rib. Careful, slow, bracing for pain with every move. He used to be a man who smiled without needing a reason. The kind that'd help an old man hitch his wagon or give a kid a lift home if the rain came down hard. Now, he walked with his head low and his hat pulled down so far you could barely see his eyes. When he did look up, there was nothing soft in them, just a kind of stillness, like winter right before the storm. The ranch hadn't changed. The horses still needed feeding, the fences still needed mending, and the land still stretched wide and open like it always had. But inside that house, inside Landon, it was different, quiet in a way that made your skin crawl. His wife, June, had died in childbirth 5 months back. The baby didn't make it either. The doc said it was a hard labor, and they did what they could. But what good are words like that when you're the one holding a lifeless baby girl and watching your wife's eyes go dim? He'd buried them on the edge of the property, under a cottonwood tree where June used to sit with her sewing and hum songs she didn't know the words to. He visited the spot every day. Sometimes he talked to them. Sometimes he didn't say a thing. Just stood there like a man, trying to remember how to be part of the living. Dry Willow was the kind of place where news spread like a prairie fire. Folks didn't say much to Landon about his loss, but they talked among themselves. Some said he was going mad. Others said he just needed time. The truth was, nobody really knew what to do with a man who looked like he was walking beside his own ghost. It was on a cold morning, not long after the first frost, when everything started to shift. Landon had saddled up before sunrise, hoping to ride the fence line before the snow got too deep. The wind bit through his coat, but he welcomed the sting. Pain made him feel something, reminded him he was still here. He was riding along the northern ridge when his horse stopped dead. Ears up, snorting like it smelled something strange. Landon narrowed his eyes and scanned the tree line. That's when he saw her. A girl, no more than 14 or 15, slumped against a log like she'd fallen and didn't have the strength to get back up. Her clothes were torn, and her arms were wrapped around herself like she was trying to hold her body together. At first, he thought she might be dead, but then she shifted just a little and made this small, broken sound that cut through the wind sharper than any blade. He dismounted fast and knelt beside her. Her face was bruised, lips cracked, one eye swollen shut. She flinched when he touched her arm. That's when he saw the marks, deep, angry bruises on her wrists and neck. "Hey," he said, his voice rough from not being used. "You with me?" Her good eye fluttered open, and she looked at him like he was something out of a dream, or maybe a nightmare. She didn't answer. Landon didn't ask questions. Not yet. He pulled off his coat and wrapped it around her, lifting her like she weighed nothing. She didn't fight him, didn't say a word, just rested her head against his chest, breathing shallow, like each breath cost her something. Back at the ranch, he laid her down on the couch near the fire and covered her with blankets. The cook, Mrs. Howell, came in and gasped, but Landon just shook his head. "Hot water. Broth if we've got any." He stayed by the girl's side all night. She didn't wake, not really, but she whimpered now and then. Names, begging someone to stop. Once she whispered, "Don't let him find me." That was all Landon needed to hear. When morning came, she opened her eyes again. Really opened them this time. Landon was there, sitting in a rocker across from her, sipping coffee that had long gone cold. "You're safe," he said. "Ain't nobody gonna hurt you here." She didn't believe him. He could see it in the way she looked at the door, like she expected a monster to come crashing through at any second. "I'm Landon," he said. "You got a name?" She hesitated. Then, in a voice like paper tearing, she said, "Maddie." He gave a small nod. "All right, Maddie. You hungry?" She didn't answer, just stared at the flames. For the next few days, She barely spoke. Only ate when someone placed food in her hands. Landon didn't push. He knew silence could be armor. He'd warned himself. Mrs. Howell fussed over her like a worried hen. But it was Landon she seemed to watch the most. The way he moved around the girl. Quiet. Careful. Like he understood that too much kindness too fast could scare her more than help her. Then, one night, Maddie woke screaming. It shook the whole house. Landon ran in and found her curled in a ball on the floor, sobbing like her soul was trying to escape. He sat down beside her, didn't touch her, just spoke low and even. "No one's here. It's just me. You're safe, Maddie." She looked up at him with eyes full of panic and shame. "He'll come for me," she whispered. "He always does." Landon felt something rise in his chest. Not pity, not even anger. Something colder, something sharper. "Who?" he asked. "My stepfather," she said. He said if I ran again, he'd kill me." Landon didn't say anything for a long time. Just sat there, jaw tight, staring into the dark like he was making a vow to someone. Maybe to June. Maybe to the girl right in front of him. He knew what kind of man left a girl like that bruised and bleeding in the woods. He'd seen men like that before. Charming in town. Monsters behind closed doors. And he knew one more thing for certain. If that man came looking for Maddie, he'd regret ever laying hands on her. The next morning, Landon saddled up to ride into town. He didn't want to leave Maddie alone, but there were things he needed. Medicine, warmer clothes for her, and information. He left her in the care of Mrs. Howell, the only person in his world he still trusted. Mrs. Howell had worked for the Briggs family since before Landon was born. She was tough, sharp-eyed, and didn't put up with nonsense. Her gray hair was always tied in a neat bun, and she could silence a room just by clearing her throat. Maddie was wary of her at first, barely speaking, but Mrs. Howell had her own way of handling pain. She didn't press. She just sat nearby, knitting, muttering about stubborn men and the cold creeping in too early this year. Sometimes, she'd place a hot cup of milk near Maddie's elbow without saying a word, and eventually, Maddie started to sip from it. Then one day, she said a soft thank you. Mrs. Howell didn't even look up, just gave the slightest nod. When Landon returned from town, he brought more than supplies. He also brought questions. Folks had started talking. A girl gone missing. Stepdaughter of Wade Harlan, a rancher up near Elk Ridge. Not a man folks liked, but one with money and influence. He'd shown up at the sheriff's office 2 days ago, red-faced and yelling about a wild, ungrateful brat who'd run off after stealing from him. Sheriff Claude Mercer had seen enough of Harlan's type to know better than to take his word at face value. But he also knew how to stay out of a rich man's way. Mercer was getting old, his beard more gray than brown, his eyes tired. He'd once been a decent man, still was in some ways. But he'd learned that justice in Dry Willow was often about who had more friends, not who was telling the truth. Landon spoke to him plainly, told him a girl had turned up hurt on his land and he was looking after her. Mercer didn't ask many questions, just leaned back in his chair and scratched his chin. "Landon, I'm not saying she's lying. I'm saying you need to be careful. Wade Harlan's the kind of man who doesn't forget a slight." "I'm not scared of him," Landon said. "You should be," Mercer replied, then added, "but I know you won't be." Back at the ranch, a new presence arrived, Tommy Callan, a younger ranch hand Landon had taken in after his own father kicked him out at 16. Tommy was quick with a joke, sharper than he let on, and fiercely loyal to Landon. He looked up to him like the older brother he never had. When he saw Maddie, something changed in his usually carefree face. He didn't ask questions, just tipped his hat and kept his distance. But later that night, when Landon was alone fixing tack in the barn, Tommy came in. "You know who she is?" he asked. Landon nodded. "More or less." Tommy leaned against a post, arms crossed. "And you know who's looking for her?" "I do." Tommy was quiet for a long time. Then, "You wanted to keep watch at night?" Landon looked up. There was no fear in Tommy's eyes, just steady resolve. "Yeah," Landon said. "I do." That night, Landon caught Maddie standing in the hallway outside her room. She was barefoot, arms wrapped tight around herself, staring out the window. "Something wrong?" he asked gently. She turned. "He knows I'm here." "How do you know that?" "I just do." Her voice trembled, but there was something fierce behind her eyes. Landon didn't argue. The ranch was big, the land even bigger, but word traveled. A few days later, someone rode up from Elk Ridge. The man was dressed in a fine coat, rode a glossy chestnut horse, and carried a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Name's Royce Harlan," he said to Landon at the gate. "Wade's nephew." Landon didn't offer a handshake. "What do you want?" Royce kept smiling. "Just checking around. My uncle's mighty worried. His stepdaughter's gone missing. Thought maybe she got turned around and ended up out this way." "She didn't," Landon said flatly. Royce's smile twitched. "That's so. She's not here." "Well," Royce said, looking out over the ranch with a slow, knowing glance, "if you see her, tell her we'd be real glad to have her back home where she belongs." Landon didn't respond. Just watched Royce ride off, the man's back too straight, his movements too calm. That was the thing about men like Royce. They always left space for a threat to linger. Later, Mrs. Howell pulled Landon aside. "They'll come back. Not just him. Wade'll send someone meaner next time." "I know," Landon said. "And the girl? What's she not telling you?" Landon looked down. "I don't think she knows how to say it yet. Secrets have a way of showing themselves, even when folks try to keep them buried." That night, Maddie had another nightmare. Screaming, sobbing, clawing at the air like she was being dragged back into hell. Landon got to her just in time. She was curled on the floor, sweat soaking her shirt, shaking all over. "He hurt my mother," she cried. "And when she tried to leave, he pushed her down the stairs." She didn't wake up. Landon felt the air leave his lungs. "She wasn't even cold yet when he came for me," Maddie whispered. "He said I was his now, said I owed him." There was a long silence. Landon reached out and gently put a hand on her shoulder. "You don't owe him a damn thing," he said. She looked at him then, really looked at him. And in that moment, something passed between them. Trust, maybe, or the beginning of it. Meanwhile, Tommy had started asking around in town. Quiet-like, listening at saloons and feed stores. It didn't take long for word to get back to Wade Harlan. One night, Tommy returned to the ranch with a busted lip and a warning. "Guy named Denton, Wade's foreman, cornered me near the stables in Elk Ridge. Said if we didn't hand her over, things are going to get real rough around here." Landon didn't say much, just nodded and walked out into the night air, his jaw clenched so tight it looked like stone. Inside, Maddie was sitting at the kitchen table with Mrs. Howell, her hands wrapped around a war mug. She looked up when Landon entered, and for the first time, there was a flicker of something in her eyes. Not fear, not yet hope, but something like the thought of it. The ranch wasn't just a hiding place anymore. It had become a line in the dirt. And Wade Harlan? He wasn't done. Not by a long shot, but neither was Landon. It started with smoke. Landon smelled it before he saw it. Acrid, bitter, riding the wind like a warning. He was out at the east pasture with Tommy, checking on a mare due to foal soon, when the scent hit them both like a slap. Tommy turned first, eyes going wide. "Fire," he muttered. They rode hard back toward the house, hearts thudding in sync with the hooves beneath them. The flames weren't at the main house, but near the old hay barn. It was engulfed by the time they arrived, black smoke curling into the sky, flames licking up toward the beams like hungry mouths. Someone had poured kerosene. This wasn't an accident. Maddie and Mrs. Howell were safe. They'd already made it out to the front porch, blankets wrapped around them. Landon saw them and felt a rush of relief before fury took its place. This wasn't just a warning anymore. It was a message. Tommy helped douse what they could, but the barn was lost. They stood there long after the flames died, ash floating in the air like ghostly snow. "Someone's been watching," Landon said, his voice low, "waiting until we let our guard down." Tommy looked at the blackened ruin and spat in the dirt. "You know who it was?" Landon nodded. "It's Harlan, or someone he sent." They didn't talk much that night. The fire had taken more than lumber. It had stolen the illusion that they could stay hidden forever. Maddie didn't sleep. Landon saw the light under her door long past midnight. He didn't sleep either. The next morning, a letter arrived. No postage. No signature. Just a folded sheet tucked under the porch rail. She belongs to me. You know what happens if you keep what's mine. Mrs. Howell found it first. She didn't say a word, just handed it to Landon with a tight mouth and steady eyes. He read it once, then folded it and stuck in his coat. Maddie saw his face change and didn't ask what it said. She already knew. Later that afternoon, Landon rode into town. Tommy begged to go, but Landon waved him off. If they try anything while I'm gone, I want someone here who can shoot straight. At the sheriff's office, Claude Mercer looked worse than usual. Paler, like he hadn't slept. You heard? Landon asked. I heard, Mercer said, his voice low. Fire like that don't start itself. You gonna do something about it? Mercer leaned back and rubbed his eyes. I'm being squeezed from both ends. Wade's got friends, and not all of them are in Dry Willow. The judge over in Grayson County owes him money. So does the mayor. I'm just trying to stay on this side of retirement. Landon stared at him, jaw working. So that's it. Mercer looked away. I didn't say that. Just means it won't be clean. You want justice, Landon? You're gonna have to dig for it. On the way out of town, Landon stopped at a general store and picked up a box of ammunition. Behind the counter was Caleb Ashby, a lean man with a crooked nose and eyes that moved too fast. Landon had always found him greasy, the kind of man who'd sell you a gun and then sell your name to the next buyer. Caleb smiled when he saw him. Word is you're sheltering a girl, he said, casual as a man talking about the weather. Landon didn't answer. Caleb leaned in a little. Wade's at a bounty out. Quiet-like. Not through the law, but word spreading. $200. Says she's sick. Says she needs help. He smirked. Funny how help always looks like shackles with that man. Landon stared hard enough to shut him up, then left without a word. Back at the ranch, things are changing. Maddie was speaking more, asking questions, watching everything. She followed Mrs. Howell around the kitchen, helped with laundry, even fed the horses once with Tommy. She still startled easily, but the sharp edges were softening. The bruises were fading, too, but the nightmares stayed. And one night, they brought something new. Landon heard her crying and rushed into her room. She was huddled in the corner, arms around her knees, whispering, "It's my fault. It's my fault." He knelt beside her. "What is?" I told him, she whispered, "about my mother. I didn't mean to. I didn't know what he'd do." Landon stared at her. Told who? Maddie looked up at him with eyes full of guilt. Royce. I didn't know who he really was. I thought he was kind. It was before my mom died. I told him how she wanted to leave Wade, that she had money saved, that we were planning to go. I thought he'd help. Landon sat back, heart pounding. Royce Harlan. She nodded. The twist settled in like a thunderclap. Royce hadn't just been looking for her on Wade's behalf. He'd been part of it. Maybe the one who told Wade everything. Maybe the one who'd started the fire. Everything shifted. This wasn't about getting Maddie back. It was about covering up what happened to her mother. A woman murdered, her death written off as an accident, and a girl who knew too much. Landon stood slowly. You did nothing wrong, he said. But now we know why they're after you. The next day, Tommy rode into town again, this time on his own. Landon had told him to stay, but Tommy had other ideas. He went straight to the saloon, found a drifter he knew from years back. Guy named Ray Taggart. Not a man to trust with your wallet, but one who had a knack for knowing secrets. Tommy bought him 2 whiskeys and waited. You're sticking your nose in something deep, Ray said, eyes darting. You hear about Wade's first wife? Tommy blinked. No, she drowned in a pond on his property. Folks said she was drunk, but some said she was running. Now, this girl's mother falls down the stairs. You seeing a pattern? Tommy didn't answer. You should walk away, Ray said. That whole family's rot. Royce, too. He plays clean, but he's mean as a coiled snake. When Tommy got back and told Landon, the pieces snapped together. Wade Harlan wasn't just abusive. He was dangerous. And Maddie wasn't just a runaway. She was a witness. That night, Landon sat with Mrs. Howell on the porch. "I think they killed her mother," he said. "Covered it up." Mrs. Howell stared at the horizon. "Then that girl's not just in danger. She's the last thread holding their lives together." The decision came easy after that. "We need to get her out," Landon said. "Somewhere Wade can't touch her." Mrs. Howell nodded. "And how far are you willing to go to make sure she stays free?" Landon looked toward the barn, where Maddie was brushing a horse with Tommy's help. She smiled just a little. It was the first time he'd seen that. "Whatever it takes," he said, but the enemy was already closing in. 2 nights later, someone cut the fence line. A horse spooked and ran, crashing through the trees. When Tommy went out to check the damage, a bullet grazed his shoulder. He barely made it back. "They're watching us from the woods," he said, blood running down his arm. "I saw 2 men. One had a rifle." Landon didn't wait. He armed himself and stayed up all night, pacing the porch with his shotgun, eyes on the tree line. Nothing happened, but the silence felt worse than gunfire. The next day, Mercer showed up, quiet, alone, riding a horse that limped slightly. "I came to warn you," he said. "Wade filed a claim this morning. Says you're holding his stepdaughter against her will." "She's not his anything," Landon said. "I know that. But if it goes through, they'll send a federal marshal. This won't stay local." Mercer handed him a folded paper. "They're playing dirty. I figure you got 3, maybe 4 days before a warrant comes." Landon didn't ask for help. Mercer didn't offer any. After he left, the house felt smaller. The land felt watched. And that's when Maddie spoke up. "I'll go," she said. Landon turned, surprised. "No, I'm not going back to Wade. I'll leave. Disappear. You've already lost enough. I won't be the reason more blood gets spilled." But Landon shook his head. "You're not running. We end this." The plan began that night. A trap of sorts. They'd heard whispers that Royce was due to visit again soon. Landon sent Tommy to town with a note for Mercer, an offer. If Mercer wanted truth, Landon would give him what the law wouldn't, a confession. But the bait had to be Maddie. She agreed, reluctantly. They'd stage it near the creek behind the house, where the woods narrowed in and voices echoed. She'd sit on a bench, alone, and talk, loud enough for someone nearby to hear. Landon would wait. So would Tommy. And if Royce or anyone else came for her, they'd hear every word. And so would the sheriff, listening from behind a rock on the far edge of the trees. They didn't have to wait long. Royce came, not alone. He had a man with him, one of Harlan's ranch hands, a mean-looking brute named Elkins. They thought it was safe. They thought Maddie was unguarded. But when Royce stepped into view, all charm and menace, and said, "It's time to come home, sweetheart," Maddie stood her ground. "You killed my mother," she said, clear as a bell. "You told him what she was planning. You told Wade." Royce's smile faltered. "You don't know what you're saying." "I know everything," Maddie replied. "I remember the bruises. I remember her crying. I remember the look on your face when she told you to leave." The woods went still. Then Landon stepped out, shotgun raised. "Don't move." And behind Royce, Sheriff Mercer rose, pistol drawn. "You're under arrest," he said. "Both of you." Royce tried to run. Elkins pulled a knife. Chaos broke loose. A shot rang out. Tommy fired first, catching Elkins in the leg. Royce made it 5 steps before Mercer tackled him, dragging him to the ground. When it was done, when the dust had settled and the cuffs were locked, Maddie stood frozen. Landon walked to her slowly. She looked up, lip trembling. "I'm safe now, right?" He nodded. "You're safe." But he knew better. Safety didn't come easy, and the war wasn't over yet. But they'd won a battle. And for the first time in months, the wind didn't feel like a warning. It felt like a breath. The storm didn't pass quietly. Even with Royce and Elkins behind bars, and Wade's name now tangled up in fresh charges, the tension didn't vanish. It shifted, turning inward, settling in the hollows of the people left standing. Landon sat on the edge of the porch for hours that morning, the shotgun beside him, untouched. He wasn't guarding the ranch anymore. He was just trying to breathe. The truth had come out. Yes, but truth doesn't mend a broken fence line or erase a year of fear. Inside the house, Maddie had barely spoken since the ambush. She sat by the window, staring out over the hills, one hand resting on her stomach like she was holding herself together. Tommy moved quieter than usual, too. The graze on his arm was healing, but something in his eyes had changed. He'd seen blood. He'd nearly spilled it himself. And for what? Justice? Protection? Revenge? He couldn't say anymore. That afternoon, Mercer returned. Not with praise, not with gratitude, just the weight of consequences trailing behind him like dust. "Wade's gone underground," he said as he sat at the kitchen table, taking off his hat with a long breath. Didn't show up to court. He skipped town. Maybe out to New Mexico, maybe further. We don't know yet. Landon didn't blink. So he's still out there. Mercer nodded. And with money. Power. Friends in places that don't ask questions. Maddie looked up at that, her lips pale. He'll come back. Mercer didn't argue. Just said, "You've stirred a hornet's nest, Landon." Royce gave enough under pressure to start an investigation, but Wade's got layers of protection. It won't be fast, and it sure as hell won't be safe. After he left, the quiet returned, but it felt heavier than before. Landon and Maddie's bond, once fragile and quietly growing, began to strain under the weight of fear and uncertainty. She started pulling away, not out of mistrust, but out of guilt. She was living in a house that had nearly been burned down. She'd been the reason Tommy had nearly died. And now Wade was loose again because of her. One night, as Landon patched up the stall gate out back, she came to him. Her arms were crossed, eyes distant. "I should go," she said quietly. He didn't turn. "Go where?" "Someplace new. Away. Maybe north. I could change my name. Start over." The wrench slipped from his hand and hit the dirt. He turned to face her, anger and disbelief flashing behind his tired eyes. "You think leaving fixes this?" "I think it keeps you alive." He stepped forward. "I don't need you to protect me." She swallowed hard. "Maybe I need to protect someone. Just once." They stood there in silence, the night thick around them. Then Landon shook his head, voice low and rough. "You're not a burden, Maddie. You're not some storm that happened to us. You're part of this family now." She looked like she wanted to believe him. But trauma has deep roots. It takes more than love to unearth it. The next morning, she was gone. She left a note on the kitchen table. Just 6 words. "I'm sorry. I had to try." Tommy found it first. He woke Landon without a word and handed it over. Landon read it once, then stood, heart pounding. "She doesn't even have a horse," Tommy said. "She took my old bay," Landon replied. "The one with the split hoof." Tommy blinked. "That horse can't make it far." "She's not thinking straight," Landon muttered. "She's scared." They saddled up fast, taking rifles and bedrolls, riding east. She'd left before sunrise, and the tracks were still fresh. They found her by dusk, 10 miles out, the bay limping bad and Maddie curled up beside it, crying. She didn't fight when Landon lifted her onto his horse. She just held on to him like she was drowning. Back at the ranch, the silence between them stretched long into the night. It was Tommy who finally broke it, standing in the doorway with his arms crossed. "You don't get to run," he said to Maddie. "Not from us. Not from this." She looked down. He stepped closer. "You think you're the only one scared? The only one carrying something heavy? I watched you try to give up. But we're still here. We don't walk away from people we care about." It was the first time Tommy had ever spoken to her like that. It broke something open. Later, she sat with Landon by the fire, knees drawn to her chest. The room was quiet except for the popping of the logs. "I keep seeing her," Maddie said. "My mom. The last night. I hear the fall. I see the blood. Sometimes I think it's my fault. Like if I hadn't told Royce, maybe she'd still be alive." Landon didn't rush to soothe her. He didn't feed her platitudes. He just said, "I see her too. Every night. Clara. I see the moment she stopped breathing. I think about what I could have done different. What I missed." Maddie looked at him, her eyes wet. "Does it ever stop hurting?" He gave a quiet, bitter laugh. "No, but you learn to live with it. And some days the pain doesn't win. She nodded slowly. I want that. You'll get it. But even as they found those small places of comfort, the world outside kept spinning darker. News came from town. Elkins had died in custody. Knife to the throat. Officially called a suicide. But Mercer didn't buy it, and neither did Landon. Wade's cleaning house, Mercer said grimly. One by one. A week later, someone shot out the windows of the house in the middle of the night. No one was hit, but the message was clear. You're still being watched. You're not safe. So they adapted, reinforced the windows, took shifts sleeping, taught Maddie how to shoot. She was a fast learner, but the stress took its toll. One morning, Landon woke to find Tommy gone. His horse missing, saddlebag light. Landon found him later that night, camped out in the hills. You left, Landon said quietly. I needed space, Tommy replied, not looking up. It's too much. This ain't how I pictured life. Fighting off ghosts with loaded guns. Landon sat down beside him. You're not a kid anymore, Tommy. You don't get to picture life. You live what you've got. You protect what matters. Tommy's jaw tensed. I'm tired of protecting people who can't be saved. Landon looked at him sharply. Maddie can be saved. Tommy didn't speak for a long time. Then finally, I know. They rode back together in the morning. And things started to shift again. Not toward peace, but toward resolve. Maddie stopped apologizing. She started asking questions. About the ranch. About Clara. About how to break a horse. How to gut a deer. How to shoot a man if she had to. And one night, after a long silence, she took Landon's hand as they sat under the stars. I don't want to be scared anymore, she said. You won't be, he promised. It wasn't romantic, not exactly. It was something harder, more earned. But just as they began to trust the quiet again, another storm rolled in. A rider came from town, Mercer's deputy. Sheriff's gone, the man said breathlessly. Took a bullet last night. Don't know who yet, but folks are saying it was a warning. They think it was about Wade. Landon's blood ran cold. Without Mercer, the last tether to the law was gone. It was open season now. The stakes were no longer just emotional. They were survival. That night, Landon gathered Maddie and Tommy at the table. We leave in 3 days, he said. Head north. I've got a friend up in Colorado. Ranch near the border. We'll disappear. Maddie opened her mouth, then closed it again. Tommy just nodded. But none of them believed it would be that easy. Because ghosts don't let go. And Wade Harlan wasn't done yet. The night before they planned to leave, the wind howled through the valley like it knew something was coming. The horses were restless. Even the old mule brayed in its stall, uneasy. Maddie stayed up late, packing quietly by the fire. Landon was outside, double-checking the saddles, rifles, the maps. Tommy paced like a caged animal, eyes darting toward every window. Then, just after midnight, the sound came, hooves. A single rider. Landon was the first to the porch, shotgun ready. Tommy followed with his rifle. Maddie stood at the door, clutching the lantern, her heart thudding so loud she couldn't hear anything else. The man who rode into their yard wasn't Wade. It was Mercer, but he looked different. Pale, unshaven, one arm bound up in a bloodied cloth. He dismounted slowly, and it was clear he was barely holding himself together. I had to ride through the hills, he said, voice dry as sand. Couldn't take the main road. They're looking for me, too. Landon led him inside. Maddie poured water. Tommy stood guard at the door. Mercer didn't waste time. Wade killed the judge, he said flatly. 2 deputies, too. Shot them in their beds. They found letters, claims that you, he nodded at Landon, were the mastermind. Said you and I conspired to take over the town, kill off the men in power. Landon didn't move. They bought it. Mercer nodded grimly. Enough of them. Not everyone, but Wade's smart. Got a silver tongue. People are scared. And scared people don't need much to believe a lie. Maddie's voice broke through. So what do we do? Mercer looked at her, then at Landon. We don't run. We end it. It was the first time someone said it out loud. Not surviving. Not hiding. Ending it. That night, no one slept. By morning, the plan was set. Mercer knew where Wade was holed up, an abandoned mining station east of town, up in the Badlands, guarded and armed. They didn't take the horses. Too loud, too slow. They left the ranch on foot before sunrise, packed light, guns ready. As they moved, Maddie's hands didn't shake like they once did. She didn't ask to stop. She didn't flinch when a rattlesnake crossed their path or when they passed the spot where she'd once tried to disappear. She was different now, the kind of different pain carves into you, the kind that never fully leaves. It took them all day to reach the outskirts of the mine. That was falling fast, wind rising again. They found cover in a gulch, scoped the area. There were 3 guards posted out front, 2 more inside, maybe more in back. They had one advantage. No one expected them to come walking straight into the fire. "We go at midnight," Mercer said. "Quiet. Fast. If we're lucky, Wade doesn't even get to draw." Tommy checked his revolver again and again. Maddie sat beside him, silent. Her eyes were clear, focused. But something was wrong. Landon felt it first. That itch in the back of his neck. The kind he'd learned not to ignore. He pulled Mercer aside. "You sure we weren't followed?" Mercer hesitated. "I came alone. I'm sure." But Landon saw it now. The 2 perfect tracks. The way the guards didn't move much. The way the place felt too still, too quiet. "It's a trap," Landon whispered. He was right. The moment they stepped from the gulch, floodlights roared to life, blinding them. Gunshots rang out. Tommy went down first. Hit in the leg, not deadly but bad enough. Maddie dragged him back behind the rocks as Landon returned fire, heart hammering in his chest. Mercer was beside him 1 second, and then wasn't. A shot cracked through the canyon. Mercer crumpled beside the boulder, blood blooming from his side. Maddie screamed. Wade's voice echoed through the canyon like the devil himself was laughing. "You always were too sentimental, Landon. Should have killed her when you had the chance." Landon's blood went ice cold. Wade stepped into view, flanked by 2 armed men. But his eyes were on Maddie. And that's when it all came apart. Because she didn't flinch. She didn't cry. She stood. And with one clean, practiced motion, she fired. The first bullet hit Wade in the shoulder. The second clipped his thigh. He dropped, screaming. Landon moved fast, using the confusion to knock one of the guards out cold. Tommy, bleeding but gritting his teeth, took down the second with a rock to the skull. Wade tried to crawl away, but Maddie followed. She stood over him, gun still warm in her hand, breathing hard. He looked up at her, blood in his teeth, voice shaking. "You wouldn't even be here if not for me. I made you strong." Her hand trembled. Landon stepped up beside her. "No," she said quietly. "You broke me. I made myself strong." She didn't shoot him again. She didn't have to. They dragged him back to town themselves, battered and bleeding. The law was in shambles, but the townsfolk were tired. Tired of fear. Tired of being ruled by silence. Wade's trial didn't take long. Maddie testified. So did Landon. So did Mercer, though he could barely walk. The real truth came out bit by bit. Wade's empire of threats, blackmail, fear. His lies, his murders. His hold on the town unraveled in the open air of the courthouse. He was sentenced to hang. No one protested. But victory didn't taste like celebration. Tommy walked with a limp now. Mercer wouldn't ever ride again. Maddie couldn't sleep without waking up gasping. And Landon? He stood by Claire's grave that evening, thinking of all the things he'd lost, and what little he had left. Maddie found him there, quiet as always. "I should feel better," she said. "I thought this would fix something." Landon nodded slowly. "It never fixes anything. It just ends a chapter." She looked at him. "What if I don't know how to start the next one?" He looked back, tired eyes steady. "Then we write it together." She slipped her hand into his. The sun dipped low behind the hills, painting the sky in fire and dust. And for the first time in a long while, there was silence without fear. Not peace, not yet, but maybe the start of it. The hanging took place on a quiet, windless morning. No speeches, no songs, just the creak of rope and the collective silence of a town that had finally seen the truth and was still learning how to live with it. Landon didn't watch. He and Tommy stood on the ridge above the gallows, far enough that the noose was just a speck against the sky. Tommy leaned on his crutch, face unreadable. The boy had grown 10 years in the past few weeks. There was no pride in what they'd done, just necessity and grief. He screamed, Tommy said, not looking at Landon. When they pulled the trapdoor, Landon didn't speak. Tommy's jaw tightened. Good. Down in the town, the crowd was already beginning to scatter. Life would go on now. The saloon would reopen. The schoolhouse, too. Folks would start trading and praying and pretending that things hadn't rotted for so long. But not everyone got to pretend. Back at the ranch, Maddie was in the field behind the barn, working a spade through dry soil. She had her hair tied back, sleeves rolled to her elbows. The sun painted her arms gold, and dust clung to her dress, but she didn't seem to care. Landon approached slowly. Watched her plant one sapling, then another. Apple trees, she said, before he could ask. Clara always wanted an orchard here. Landon swallowed hard. I never told you that. I know, she said softly. I found her journal. They stood in silence as she patted the dirt around the roots. I don't know if I can be what she was to you, Maddie said after a while. But I want to grow something that lasts. Landon looked at her. She wasn't asking for promises. She wasn't offering fairy tales. Just something real. Something earned. You already are, he said. She blinked, and for the first time in days, she smiled. Later, as dusk fell, the three of them, Landon, Maddie, Tommy, sat on the porch together. No one talked much. The crickets sang. The wind was warm, and the weight that had pressed down on them for so long felt a little lighter. Tommy broke the silence first. What now? Landon leaned back in his chair. We fix what we can. Fence line's busted. Only it's patching. Roof's not going to survive the next storm. Tommy snorted. So back to work. Maddie gave a small nod. Back to life. For the first time in a long time, there was no threat waiting around the bend. No shadow chasing them down. But scars don't vanish just because the bleeding stops. Maddie still had nightmares. Some nights, she woke up crying, fists clenched, eyes wild. And Landon didn't try to talk her down. He just held her until the shaking stopped. Tommy still flinched at loud sounds. Still checked the locks twice at night. But he started whistling again when he fed the horses. Started carving little figures out of wood like he used to. As for Landon, he stood over Clara's grave one last time that fall. The grass had grown back. Maddie had planted wildflowers. And for the first time, he didn't feel guilty for moving forward. He knelt down and whispered something no one else heard. Then he walked back to the house, where Maddie was waiting, barefoot and dust-covered, hands smelling like soil and soap. They didn't talk about love. Not yet. What they had now was deeper than the word aloud. They had survival, trust, hope, and that had to be enough. But there was one more truth Landon carried, the one he never said out loud, not even to Maddie. It wasn't just Wade's cruelty that had broken the town. It was the silence, the way people looked the other way, the way power let men like Wade get away with murder until someone fought back. He had killed that silence. All of them had. And that was the real victory. Not revenge, not justice, but making sure no girl like Maddie ever had to scream in a locked room again without someone listening. As winter neared, the apple trees stood like little bones in the frozen ground, bare but stubborn. Next spring they might bloom,